Okay, welcome to this year's World Water Day arrangement in Oslo. The World Water Day is an official UN day that is arranged in March every year. And this year's topic is water and gender. And the program this year has been put together by a committee that is consisting of Forum for Technology and Development Cooperation, the Norwegian Water Association, and the Norwegian Hydrological Council. And we are very pleased to present several very relevant and interesting talks today from both national and international speakers. And as is tradition, we will also award the Norwegian Junior Water Prize today, which is a competition where young students are presenting projects on water, doing research. So we will do that as part of the program today as well. And I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, which is actually going to put the day in perspective. That is the State Secretary for Ministry and Culture and Equality, Erlend Hanstveit. So the floor is yours, Erlend. Welcome.
Thank you very much, og hei alle sammen. Veldig hyggelig å få være her og hilse på dere i rommet. Jeg slår over til engelsk, for at vi har representanter fra både UN Women og UNDP til stede. So, distinguished colleagues, friends and partners, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you today as we mark the United Nations World Water Day. This year's theme, Water and Gender, where water flows, equality grows, is a powerful reminder that the global water crisis affects everyone, but not equally. Water is a deeply gendered issue. Where safe water and sanitation are lacking, women and girls carry a disproportionate burden. And before delving deeper into the water dimension, I would like to take a step back and reflect on the broader global landscape for gender equality, the landscape into which this year's World Water Day is being launched. We are meeting in a time of global uncertainty, not just because we are witnessing an increase of unrest, war, and conflict in the world, but also because we find ourselves in the middle of a fundamental battle over values. Gender equality is not only affected by conflict lines, gender equality has itself also become a conflict line. Around the world, we see well-coordinated, well-organized, and well-funded pushback against gender equality, the right to bodily autonomy, and to make decisions about your own life. These actors are trying to push us back to a time when a woman's place was defined by the walls of her own home. A time where girls were not given the same opportunities as men to learn, to dream, or to decide about their own future. Recent international developments like the defunding of global aid and the expansion of the global gag rule show how quickly political decisions can restrict access to essential health services, education, and basic human rights for women and girls. The US authorities expanded the so-called global gag rule, which targets the work on safe abortion, LGBT+ rights, identity, and efforts to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity. The policy now applies to all non-military aid, to NGOs and multilateral organizations alike, and even to governments. And we know that such measures threaten women's health, safety, and agency. And in the most severe cases, it costs life. These trends are not only distance, and the anti-gender movements operate across borders, accelerating through digital platforms, and their message spread fast, polarize quickly, and reach young people in particular. And even in Norway, a country with traditional strong support for equality, debates on gender, sexuality, and sexual and reproductive health and rights have sharpened, and support for gender equality is slightly declining, especially when we look at young men. And last week, I participated in the UN Commission of the Status of Women, the world's largest multilateral forum on gender equality. Each year, the Commission adopts agreed conclusions that outline global priorities and concrete recommendations. And each year, we see more clearly that progress is not inevitable. It requires strong political will, strong partnerships, and the courage to defend what has been achieved through the years. And while some are pushing back, it is important also to remember that the large majority continue to push for progress, for a future where equality is not an ideal, but a lived reality. A society where everyone, regardless of their gender or their identity, have equal rights and opportunities to go to school, to work, and to participate in public and private life. Norway has an important role in defending what has already been achieved and in pushing for further progress. We shall be a voice that does not waver, that builds alliances, and that reminds the world that gender equality is not a luxury, it is a precondition for peace, development, and democracy. And we know from our history and from our experience in this country that prioritizing gender equality is not only just, it is fundamental to economic growth, stability, and it creates more resilient societies. Which brings me to today's theme, water, gender, and equality. Safe access to clean water, sanitation and hygiene, and women's equal participation in water governance are essential foundations for development, stability, and gender equality. The intersection between conflict, climate change, and water scarcity is becoming more pronounced. And when these factors reinforce each other, the burdens become even more severe. Increased risk of displacement, heightened exposure to violence, loss of livelihoods, and barriers to education. When we look closely at global water realities, we see that women and girls are disproportionately responsible for fetching, storing, protecting, and managing household water. Where safe water and sanitation are not available, women lose time, health, and opportunities. Lack of water and sanitation facilities limits women and girls' ability to attend school, to work, and to participate in society. In many places around the world, unsafe or non-existent sanitation facilities expose women and girls to heightened risk of harassment and violence, and fail to meet basic hygiene needs, for example, during menstruation and pregnancy. And these burdens are not only the result of infrastructure gaps. These are the results of institutional and social norms that often exclude women from decision-making in the very sector they carry each day. This is why we must work to ensure the effective and meaningful participation of girls and women in all decision-making processes, at all levels, as community leaders, engineers, scientists, sanitation workers, farmers, entrepreneurs, policymakers, or negotiators. And furthermore, participation is not itself sufficient. We shall also work on understanding how we better can integrate gender perspectives into all our policy development. So, dear colleagues and friends, water can be a powerful force for gender equality. And on this World Water Day, let us recommit to a future where safe water and sanitation are realities for all, where the voices of women and girls in all their diversity are not only heard, but leading, where everyone can live their free, safe, and dignified lives. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Erlend, for this great introduction. We also have a small gift for you. You can choose between some coffee or tea from Alik Kaffe, which is a cafe providing work for people with a history of substance use. So if you want tea or coffee, please have one. Then I will give the word to our next speaker, which is Hans Olav Ibrekk. He's a Special Envoy for Climate and Security in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he will give us some background and status for the Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water. So, please, Hans Olav.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to give this presentation, and also a sincere thank to the State Secretary for this really eloquent and excellent overview presentations of the challenges and opportunities that we are all faced with when it comes to managing our water resources and also providing essential services to all of us. Some of you might wonder what a diplomat is doing in this room, so just to explain a little bit of my own background, where I'm coming from. I actually done water research at NIVA for 10 years when I was young and promising. Now I'm only promising. And also worked on international water issues in the World Bank, was part of the Millennium Development Project on water and sanitation, and I was also the lead advisor to Børge Brende when he was the chair of the Commission on Sustainable Development way back in 2003, 2004, when the Commission reviewed the status on water and sanitation. I'm currently also the focal point on water in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I'm now working on climate and security. I normally say that I have water here because that's my background and that's what I really would like to work on. But right now I'm working on climate and energy, and that's more up here in the sense that... but I'm really pleased to see the good turnout and the active engagement. I can say that the first World Water Day was actually celebrated in 1993. And in 95, the topic was actually also women and water. So in that sense, we're going back to the 90s with our topic. Just to put this a little bit in perspective, we had the Millennium Development Goals that were adopted at the Millennium Summit in 2000. 8 goals, 21 targets. Water was part of the target 7 or goal 7, ensure environmental sustainability. The target was to halve the people without access to water supply and sanitation. You see the numbers on the screen here in terms of the achievements that was made during that period. And then in 2015, the world came together and adopted the Sustainable Development Goals with 17 goals and 169 targets. So you can see that the agenda has expanded then from 8 goals to 17 goals. But the main reason for that was that the MDGs was focusing on development and developing countries, while the Sustainable Development Goals applies to all of us. So that's the new framework that we have. In terms of current status and trends, so how are we doing? I think the overall message is that we are not doing very well when it comes to meeting the target that all people should have access by 2030. So we are off track, and we need to do a lot more in order to achieve it. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that we need to shift into overdrive. I think we need to do even more than shifting into overdrive. We really need to beef up our action quite significantly in order to be able to meet the targets that we have set. This is something I got from the UN Water, and it shows just the 12 targets that we have in terms of SDG 6. So it's actually a rather complicated target because it has all these indicators and they have an extensive monitoring program. And of course, we have to be mindful of the fact that many developing countries, especially the poorest countries, don't have the capacity to monitor and report on all the data. But we see then in terms of drinking water, 1 out of 4 lack services. Still about 3.5 billion lack access to adequate sanitation. Open defecation, which I'm trying to translate that sometimes to Norwegian, and I haven't really come up with a good enough word, at least not a polite word to use. But over 400 million people, we've made significant progress then, especially in India, where this has been a really key political priority for the Indian government to reduce the number of people practicing open defecation. lack of hand washing. 2 billion people lack actually facilities for hand washing. In terms of our ability to treat wastewater is of course way too little at the moment, and also we are not using water very efficiently. We also see, as the State Secretary also mentioned, that the increasing water scarcity, more and more people live in water-stressed communities. I can just mention that, in fact, we have a couple of capitals also that are now basically running out of water. We can take Sana'a in Yemen. They have drilled down to, I think, about 1,200 meters to find water. The question is, Yemen is also the most water-scarce country in the world. And I think they have about 200 cubic meters per person per year. And then you can ask yourself, how are they using the water resources? They're using it to grow khat, the narcotics. So not very efficient use of water either. Tehran, which of course we're all looking at these days, is also just about to run out of water. So the question is whether they will have enough water in Tehran for the future. We also have lack of capacity in terms of doing integrated water resources management, and we don't have necessary cooperative arrangements for the transboundary waters that most of us actually are part of. We also see that ODA, or aid then to the water sector, has actually gone down, and that's been on a downward trend for actually several years. And those of us that work on water, of course, that's not a good message. So what are some of the challenges and the acceleration? You see, we need to beef up our action from 4 to 6 times in order to meet the target. So I think that at least we have the politicians, and the politicians have not really said that we will not reach, for instance, the 1.5 degree target. It's a political target. I think this is still a political target, but of course the facts and the science tells us that this is not going to be achievable by 2030, that we will be able to provide more 3.5 million people with adequate sanitation facilities and more than 2 million people with adequate water services. So I think we need to acknowledge that we will not get there, and we then also need a new development framework. But these are then the official sort of rating from the UN in terms of the various SDGs, how we are doing. And you can see water is actually the second worst performing SDG of all of them. I'm working specifically on SDG 7. I'm heading a technical advisory group in the UN on SDG 7, and SDG 7 is the best performing SDG. And we are not doing a good job in energy either. So it's so in that sense, we are way behind delivering on what we have committed to deliver. And the State Secretary also alluded to some of the headwinds that we are faced with today. It's not really the best conducive geopolitical situation to move this agenda forward. The US, for instance, don't accept the word sustainable development anymore. That's taken out in our declaration. The same with climate change is out. In DEI, diversity and gender, you mentioned it from the Commission last week. So in the sense, we are really under pressure. I don't see that water is being pushed out, at least in the documents that I've been reviewing lately. So that's still on our global agenda. But of course, these days it's really hard to get political attention to a subject like this when there's so much going on in the world, especially when you are in the foreign affairs. Barriers, and I normally say that the library is full of books about barriers, but it's quite empty when it comes to solutions. And I think we should have focused more on finding the adequate solutions. But for me, the key thing that we need to ensure is that we get water and sanitation to be prioritized. We need to work with our decision makers, the ministries of finance, because the minister of finance, they have one cake to allocate to all the sectors, and that means we have to make the case for water and sanitation. And if we get more to water and sanitation, there will be less to another sector, and that's the consequence that we are faced with. So for me then it's the most important thing that we try to make the case for all the benefits that we have in investing in water and sanitation, and then we get allocation of budgets in accordance with it. We all know that there is a human right to have access to water and sanitation, but we see now increasingly the difficulties that we are faced with in terms of, maybe I went one too quickly here, on climate change. It's a risk. That's the area I'm focusing on these days. Some like to label climate as a threat multiplier, especially if you're coming from the defense community. We like to call it a risk multiplier because there's no hard security solutions to climate change. But of course, climate change translates into water, so it's actually that's where it's happening. So that means that we as a water community, we need to be engaged in looking at climate change and how that affects. And of course, since more and more people will be living in water-stressed countries, this will be an added challenge to all of us. Finance is always lacking, and you see the numbers here. There's huge gaps in terms of all the trillions needed. Maintenance is generally overlooked, and it's actually, especially for private sector in developing countries, it's related as a huge investment risk, and private sector then typically take or put a huge margin on their investments when it comes to the cost of capital is quite high actually in developing countries, and that stops institutional investors and private sector from investing. Then we have the invisible crisis, which is called, in terms of water quality and pollution. That's on the rise in many parts of the world. Agriculture runoff is a critical issue in many countries, and then we also have some additional systemic barriers. I like to focus on the lack of skilled labor, and I think actually the Junior Water Prize could be a contribution to this, because we need more young people to start working on water and sanitation, or from also, if I put on my energy hat, we need more engineers, we need more technicians in order to do the job. Without getting more young people into STEM, science, technology, education, they cannot all study communication and finance. We need some people also in the hard one. I'm actually, just to show you, my background is from the Norwegian Institute of Technology, NTH, NTNU as it's called these days. I'm trained as I could have been a municipal engineer in any municipal in Norway, but now I ended up as a diplomat. So in that sense, what you do from the start, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to continue doing that type of work for your whole life. I'm actually the only civil engineer, except for one guy in the building who was looking after buildings in the Foreign Affairs, but I'm the only Foreign Affairs diplomat with a civil engineering background. So then let me move a little bit into what I'm specifically dealing with these days, in the sense that linking this to climate, peace and security, which was also referenced to in the State Secretary's speech. Of course, this is just a map of showing the level of water stress. And we also say that we normally have this arc of instability, arc of conflicts, basically going from, let's say, from Mali to Afghanistan. And that's, you could overlay this with water. I'm not saying that water is the reason why there's a lot of stuff happening in this region, but it's a region which is water stressed. Temperature is increasing quite rapidly. There are resource conflicts, and there are a lot of political issues as well. But most of the conflicts in the world are actually associated with the regions that we see, and it's also the most water-stressed areas in the world. Then, like I said, we are all, nearly all living in some kind of, or many of us are living in international waters. We have about 300 plus international river basins in the world. I think only half of them have some type of cooperative arrangement in place. So that means we need to put a lot more emphasis on developing those cooperative arrangements to make sure that we are managing increasingly scarce water resources in a better manner than we are doing today. Just to mention a few of them, of course, in Europe, we have Danube, Sava River, Mekong. It's all the downstreamers are part of it, but China are not part of it. Then, of course, most water people have followed the Nile discussions. There are some agreements, but still some disagreements between the riparian countries. In Africa, we have good arrangements in Zambezi, Niger, and the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then we have one of the first ones was in the Indus Treaty between India and Pakistan. And actually they have met, except for 1 or 2 years, every year to discuss water issues since 1960. So that's mean the Indus Treaty is one of the most sort of reliable water sharing arrangements that we have. How many of you play chess? Okay, there are some chess players. Then you know when you're playing chess, you know the board. You have the board in front of you. You know the board will not change, so you can plan your moves, be it in terms of defense or offensive. When you add climate change to this, then it's getting more complicated for you when you're going to do the chess playing. And I think from a lot of the actors today, we are actually now into this chessboard, which is getting a lot more complicated. It's not that I'm saying that climate change and the water scarcity issues will sort of be the deciding factor when you are playing the chess game, but you need to factor it into your decision-making structure, because if you leave out climate change, water scarcity, and some of these other global issues into this, you will not be able to execute your planned chess game. Water conflicts, again, I'm saying I'm running out of time, as I always do. But water, of course, can be the trigger or the root cause also from some conflicts, especially when it comes at the local level between pastoralists and farmers. Land is getting scarce, and you have pastoralists that are putting out their cattle there and herding them, and then you get conflict with farmers. It can also be used as a weapon, and we've seen this now. We see it actually in Iran, because they have started to hit some water desalination plants. And I think actually that could be even more critical to some of the countries surrounding in that area if you really start knocking out water desalination plants. Energy infrastructure you can actually build up. It will have implications for all of us in terms of energy supply and also for the economy. But if you take out water desalination plants in the Middle East, then they don't have water actually, and that's going to be critical. And you probably followed that Ukraine also flooded an area when Russia invaded, and Russia then also knocked out the Kakhovka Dam. So they've all been using then water infrastructure, even though we are not allowed to do it according to the Geneva Convention. And then it's also a casualty of war that we also see going forward. Yeah, that means that I got, yeah. But I think the message that I would like to convey to you, even though that water is part of a conflict, is being used in a conflict, water conflict so far has not really been a source of tension, but it hasn't ended up in armed conflicts. There are only a few examples in the world where you could sort of relate a water conflict to shots being fired. But we see now all the incidents. It's going up, and that's a concern to us. But typically, water is a source of cooperation rather than a source of conflict. So that's why I'm underscoring the importance of finding institutional arrangements for transboundary water, that we can start working together and implement some of these actions together. It will most likely lead to diplomatic agreements rather than water wars. So I think the notion of the next wars will be fought over water, as an ad in the New York Times said I think it was in 1995. So way back in time, but then we had the Iran-Iraq situation afterwards, so it was more basically related to oil, and I think that's what we see today as well. I think the State Secretary has eloquently outlined why the topic of this year's World Water Day is so important, so I'm not going to try to add to his excellent remarks. I would encourage, I'm hoping that we will get them in writing so we can start looking at them, because I find them extremely good. But let me just highlight one issue that has always been close to my heart that doesn't really get any attention, but the State Secretary actually had it in his speech, and that was sanitation. I feel that often when we talk about water and SDG 7, it's all about water. That's the same with energy. When we talk energy, it basically equals electricity. We don't talk about clean cooking, and we don't talk about sanitation. So the key words, at least that we used to highlight before, was the issue of privacy, dignity, and safety for women when it comes to sanitation. And I think those three key words summarizes for me why this is so important. But we need to then make sure that our politicians talk about sanitation in the way the State Secretary did, because very few of them actually do that. It's a lot safer to talk about water instead of talking about sanitation. The key facts you've seen, and you can find more of them. What are we doing now globally? We had the first World Water Conference, and you can guess, when was the first World Water Conference? No one could answer it. I need to look at my notes also. It was actually in 1977, Mar del Plata, 1977, Mar del Plata in Argentina. Then we had the next formal second UN World Water Conference, or Water Conference, will be the one in 26 in Abu Dhabi. We've had global water conferences in between. I worked actually in 1992, 1991 and 1992 on the International Conference on Water and Environment. That was the input into the Rio conference. And then the UN organized also a conference on water in 23, which was a midterm review of the UN Decade for Water and Sanitation. So that means also globally or politically, this has not really been an issue, but now we are getting water and sanitation more on the intergovernmental agenda, and many of us will be meeting then in Abu Dhabi in December. What about Norway? We did not attend the 23 conference. And then we'll see whether we will be attending the upcoming one in December. But water and sanitation is not a priority in development cooperation, because that is what, even though I should not make references to former governments, but the current government has actually continued this. And that this was then stated by Minister Ulstein in Parliament, that water and sanitation, transport and urban issues are not a priority within Norwegian development cooperation. And that's been the situation. And in the current government platforms, water is not included when it comes to development and international issues. There is some limited engagement, and you'll hear more about that later on through our humanitarian civil society support. But Norway, we are a really small donor when it comes to water supply and sanitation. If you look at the OECD DAC categorization, I think we are up to about 80-90 million Norwegian kroner per year that we spend on water supply and sanitation. So that's a rather small amount considering the size of the development budget. Now the Minister of Development Cooperation has launched a new, he's calling it the turning point, the Vendepunkt. And now he has invited all of us to a dialogue on what should be the priorities for Norway going forward. How should our development cooperation look like? So I think this is an opportunity. So I'm encouraging all of you that have something that you would like to say, to engage and make the case for the topics that are close to your heart. So with those words, thank you very much and good luck with the celebration of the World Water Day.
Thank you so much, Hans Ola, for your very important talk. And thanks also to Erlend for your introduction. We are very grateful for all people here. We are a full room. It's fantastic. So I will introduce the next speaker. She is from UN Women. It's Bindu Bandari, Senior Advisor, and she is speaking from Nairobi. Thanks.
Good morning, afternoon, evening. I hope you can hear me well. Greetings, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, valued partners, and friends. UN Women is grateful for the opportunity to participate in this 2026 observance of Old Water Day and wishes to sincerely thank the organizing committee, the Norwegian Association for Water Hygiene, the Norwegian Hydrological Council, and the Forum for Technology and Development Cooperation, as well as the previous speakers, Excellency Erlend Hanstveit, State Secretary, and the Special Envoy for Climate and Security for laying out that overarching framing of the current realities and the context in which we are working to advance these issues together. So thank you for that. This year's theme, Water and Gender Equality, where water flows, equality grows, serves as a powerful reminder that advancing SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation and achieving gender equality are not separate or competing priorities. They are intrinsically linked, mutually reinforcing, and essential to building a more just and sustainable future. To understand the stakes, let us first consider the current global water landscape. It was also very well presented by earlier speaker and its interconnections with gender equality. As we very well know, water is essential to life, health, food, livelihoods, and the realization of a range of human rights. Yet, for billions of people, access to safe water and sanitation remains out of reach even today. And while the global water crisis affects everyone, it does not affect everyone equally. Women and girls bear the greatest impacts of this unequal access to and scarcity of water. Every day, they spend a collective 250 million hours collecting water, caring for families, and managing scarcity, often at the cost of their education, income, health, and safety. When water is unsafe or unavailable, inequalities deepen and opportunities disappear. This reality was realized and recognized over 30 years ago in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which underscored the central role of women in environmental sustainability and called for their full participation in the management and safeguarding of natural resources, including water. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly affirmed this by recognizing safe drinking water and sanitation as a human right, as well as adopting a standalone Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, on water and sanitation. Though it lacks gender-specific indicators, making it a bit trickier from the measurement perspective. Agreed conclusions of the 68th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, adopted 2 years ago, reaffirm the importance of improving access to safe water and sanitation facilities to enhance the safety of all women and girls and call on member states to strengthen access. Today, these commitments are more urgent than ever. Still, more than 2.1 billion people worldwide lack access to safe drinking water. And it was also shown in the map by the previous speaker. And this gap is not gender neutral. More than 1 billion women lack access to safely managed drinking water services. And nearly 10% of the world's female population live with high or critical water stress. Among these, An estimated 205 million women drink water from unimproved sources of surface water, lack access to safely managed drinking water services. And when water scarcity occurs from climate change, environmental degradation, disasters, or wars, these inequalities deepen. An estimated 1.5 billion women and girls live in countries with high or very high exposure to drought. During periods of acute stress, such as the 2022 drought in the Horn of Africa, women faced disproportionate impacts. 9 million women of reproductive age experienced heightened impacts to their health and increased risks of gender-based violence. These figures make clear that water inequality is a part of a broader systemic pattern. Specifically, the gender impacts of the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. As UN Women's Policy Brief, Gender Responsive Just Transition for People and Planet notes, environmental crises intensify existing gender gaps in access to essential goods and services, including water, land and energy, undermining women's livelihoods and well-being. These disparities will only deepen as the crisis accelerates. These impacts extend further with significant implications for women's unequal share of unpaid care and domestic work. UN Women's Working Paper, The Climate Care Nexus, explains that women and girls face heavier workloads when access to essential services such as water, sanitation, and energy is limited. Let's look at some data. Data from Senegal, for example, illustrates that rural women spend between 4 and 8 hours a day on unpaid care and domestic work, rising to as much as 12 hours, which is way above the global average of 4.5 hours. In an analysis of national drought plans under the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, reporting from Afghanistan showed that 61% of households indicated that women's workloads are increased due to drought, with women and girls forced to travel further from home to collect essential water and fuel, and in turn exposing themselves to possible harm. But women are not only the most affected by the water crisis, they are also the powerful agents of change. Across communities, women are leaders, water stewards, farmers, engineers, and innovators. When women participate fully in water governance and decision-making, services are more inclusive, systems are more resilient, and investments deliver stronger and more lasting results. Gender equality is not only a matter of rights, it is a foundation for effective water management and sustainable development. Yet, women's central role in water management is too often overlooked or seen as peripheral. Deep-rooted discriminatory social norms that prioritize men as decision-makers continue to exclude women from water-related leadership. The United Nations Environment Programme, Global Water Partnership, and UN Women's Joint Policy Note, Mainstreaming Gender Equality in Water Access and Management, highlights that urgent need to integrate gender considerations into water management to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality and 6 on clean water and sanitation. The publication found that around 14% of countries still lack mechanisms to ensure women can participate equally in water management. And where mechanisms do exist, obstacles to training and building technical expertise can keep women from fully contributing to the decision-making processes. In response to the challenges, UN Women is actively working in collaboration with partners to advance women's voice, agency, leadership, and participation in water resource management for true feminist water governance that limits the gender differentiated impacts of water scarcity at the local, national, and regional level. Let us look at some examples. In Vietnam, the Water is Life initiative, supported by the government of Japan, addresses the gender impacts of drought and salt water intrusion in Ca Mau and Ninh Thuan provinces. By providing rainwater storage tanks and filtration systems, the project has improved access to clean water for over 10,000 people, particularly women and children. The initiative strengthens the leadership of women in community resilience and water governance, which are all key components to advancing climate-resilient livelihoods. UN Women also works to advance the leadership of indigenous, Afro-descendant, and rural women who hold valuable knowledge of water, land, biodiversity, and contribute greatly to the protection of these resources. In Colombia, for example, the Mujeres Cambiando su Mundo initiative, led by UN Women in partnership with the governments of Colombia and Germany, supports women environmental defenders who are leading efforts to protect biodiversity and strengthen climate resilience in Colombia's conflict-affected regions of Cauca and Magdalena Medio. The program recognizes the work of women environmental defenders and creates a safe and enabling environment for their advocacy while protecting their livelihoods and facilitating their participation in decision-making. These local and national interventions go hand in hand with efforts to strengthen gender-responsive synergies across international normative frameworks, as outlined in the UN Women's recent working paper, Advancing Gender-Responsive Synergies Across the Rio Conventions. UN Women is working with partners and stakeholders to ensure a gender-transformative and human rights-based approach across climate, biodiversity, and land and natural resources agendas. UN Women emphasizes the urgent need to strengthen coordination across all three Rio Conventions to deliver gender-responsive and right-based solutions. It highlights that a central area of synergy lies in realizing women's and girls' rights to land and to natural resources, including water. While gains have been made, advancements are more critical than ever in this critical year for the water agenda, spanning from today's World Water Day observance to the UN Water Conference, which will take place later in December this year. Commitments at all levels must now translate into measurable, sustained action. This demands strong gender mainstreaming at the highest level of leadership and political will, backed by accountability mechanisms that turn these ambitions into impact. Gender equality must be explicitly embedded in water laws, policies, and financing frameworks, not as an add-on, but as a prerequisite and an enabler for effectiveness. Equally critical is the establishment of robust monitoring systems with sex-disaggregated and intersectional data to inform decision-making and to ensure that no one is left behind, as well as making it the priority while we shape the post-2030 development agenda. At the same time, feminist water governance must actively recognize, reduce, and redistribute the disproportionate burden of unpaid care and water collection borne by women and girls around the world. UN Women stands ready to support member states and partners in advancing water policies that are gender responsive by design, investments that close rather than widen gender inequalities, and leadership that reflects the full diversity of the communities most affected. Excellencies, colleagues, and partners, the question before us is not whether we understand the link between water and gender equality. The evidence is clear, the commitments are in place. The question is whether we will act with urgency, with scale, and with accountability. Because where water is unequal, opportunity is unequal. and where opportunities on equal sustainable development cannot take root. But the reverse is also equally true. Where water flows equitably, equality grows. Where equality grows, societies thrive. Let this be the moment where we move decisively from recognition to redistribution, from commitment to implementation, and from promises to progress. Let us ensure that water becomes not a source of division or disparity, but a driver of justice, resilience, and shared prosperity for all. Thank you so much for having UN Women and me join this conversation. Thank you, and over to you.
Thanks a lot, Bindu, for this very important and interesting talk. We also have another international speaker waiting on Teams, and that is Mary Matthews, who are the global water lead in UNDP, and she will talk about how they empower women through water for development. So let's see if we can get Mary up on the screen here. I'm sorry for the minor technical problems during the last talk, but I think we'll fix that for now, and we're ready for Mary's talk.
I'm here and can see you, but I don't think you guys can see me.
We can hear you, but still not see
Right. Okay.
But you can see, there we can see you, and
There we are.
Get your presentation up on the screen as well.
Okay.
That's
All righty, that's super. I'll go ahead and get started while we're getting the presentation up. Does that work for you all?
Yeah, I think you can just start talking and then we'll get your presentation up. You're sharing from your side?
Yeah. I can. Give me just a second to do that.
Yeah, great.
Righty, give me just a second. We're gonna do this. It's gonna work. It's gonna be super. Thanks so much for this. I appreciate everybody's help with this, and very much appreciate that. Am I still sharing? No. Okay, we're going to make this work. Give me just a second again. Apologies to everyone. If this is the biggest problem we have today, we're in really, really good shape. All right, sharing this screen. Take just a second here, do this here. All right, let me back up. And I was thinking you guys were going to do this. So again, I apologize for this. I want to start by thanking all of the previous speakers for outlining the very important work that's been done and is going on in water and gender. This has been really exceptionally put together, and the organizers have done a great job with this. So thank you all so very much. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mary Matthews. I'm the Global Water Lead for UNDP, the United Nations Development Program. And within UNDP, we have a very large portfolio across water. We have the UN's largest water portfolio. And the work we do on water and gender, I think, is one of the most exciting parts of that. Let me share with you very quickly the next slide, which is our corporate message that will be coming out for World Water Day. And please let me know that you can hear it. Oops. That's not what I meant to do. Apologies. All righty, here we are. Next slide. Thank you very much. I mentioned earlier that UNDP has the UN's largest water portfolio, and UNDP actually works across all of the SDGs and with ministries across all aspects of governments in developing countries. One thing that we've spent a lot of time doing is actually identifying our water portfolio, which for water-focused projects between 2018 and 2024, we have over 545 water-focused projects that are global, and we actually know that that number is actually a bit higher. And they do span across all the SDGs. One thing that's interesting to note, the value of that is $2.5 billion. Of that, over almost $1 billion are addressing the gender equality issue specifically within their projects. Many more do, but the ones that have been tagged specifically for gender are worth about $1 billion. And as we say, these are counting. But we know there's a reason we have to be active and engaged with women and water. As has been noted before by previous speakers, in households without access to water, 80% of the responsibility for hauling water falls to women. And this does have tremendous gender impacts. It has tremendous impacts on sanitation, on security for these women, and for their dignity. As a result, both while they're hauling water as well as the sanitation that is required for basic human dignity, men have up to 4 times the amount of time to engage in economic, political, social, public activities compared to women. By increasing household access to water and women and communities' access to water, we will empower 640 million women and girls to become more active and engaged public citizens. And that's what we need. We cannot have sustainable development without them. But the question is often, well, how do we do that? And in UNDP, we take a multi-staged approach that works across multiple areas, multiple levels of development, multiple levels of need, where we really meet people where they are to make this work. We know that if we do not have women involved in water management at levels, that sustainable development is not realistic. Let me give you some examples. Righty, giving you some examples. Okay, our first one is construction of community wells in Togo, specifically to empower women. And one of the issues in these rural water scarce communities is women were having to spend a tremendous amount of time going out and looking for water and hauling water back to their homestead. We went in and developed manual pumping wells to improve water access in these water scarce regions. By doing this, the women knew where the water was, and they knew they reliably could access it and be able to use that water to feel more empowered and support their livelihoods. This was such a successful program that local communities, other villages, actually come to UNDP and requested similar wells, including 120 villages in response to this. That number still really does surprise and astound me. And we're working to do that. Another case is in regards to gender responsive water management for climate adaptation. Women in Fiji, in the community of Tuvalu, were overwhelmingly impacted by droughts, floods, irregular rain cycles, lack of access to fresh water. And we made a specific point to get the women involved very, very early on, to give them a chance to be involved in shaping the decisions from the ground from the very beginning. And as a result, these projects have been much stronger. They've improved water access, reduced their burden, strengthened the resilience, but also created a model that can be scaled and replicated, just like the Togo model could be, to other communities and honestly to other countries and other regions. This is one of the really important things we're working on doing within our water portfolio in UNDP. Another example that we have goes beyond that to work we are doing in Libya, where we're strengthening women's roles in the IWRM process because women have been traditionally excluded from this, as noted earlier. We're getting them engaged as local leaders in water governance. We're training them how to become more active, more engaged, and an active voice in IWRM. And I'm sure, as everyone in the room there knows, people don't automatically understand what integrated water resources management is and the importance of having multiple and inclusive voices. We've actually taken a very specific approach in our Libya country office towards making sure women are empowered, that they're talking to other women in their communities, and we're strengthening water security and community resilience. This is part of a larger ongoing project, and we're very proud of the progress that's being made, not only in Libya, but in countries across the Arab states and North Africa region, where water scarcity is so critical. And yes, it is a potential source of conflict. We find when we have women involved, it's also a wonderful potential source of cooperation. This brings me to our next project, or another project that we've worked on, which is the Women and Water Diplomacy Network. Now, originally, this was developed with UNDP and with the Stockholm International Water Institute, funded through CETA, to start getting women talking to each other in both the technical ministries and in the ministries of foreign affairs. So it pairs up high-level women in Ministry of Foreign Affairs who are dealing with transboundary negotiations and the high-level technical women who are working in water. And they're paired up. They meet regularly between themselves. There are 3 meetings a year for the entire basin that they meet and they discuss this virtually. And then we have an in-person meeting once every year, pending resource availability, where the women can come together to each other and work together and work out solutions. And the outcome of this has just been absolutely fantastic. The program is spreading around the world and it really has done amazing things. I've often said one of the issues, and this goes back to the sanitation issue, everywhere in the world I've traveled, you never see men going to the bathroom and having conversations together. It just doesn't happen. I've never seen a place where they will do that. But women will speak to each other in the restroom. It's a safe space. We talk about our hair, we talk about our work, we talk about what's going on. I think this is one of the really valuable lessons about gender, as well as the importance of building and strengthening these networks. In addition, these women are bringing a very different and a very important perspective to national water diplomacy, as well as transboundary water diplomacy, as well as to this global network. I'm very proud to be a very strong advocate for. So we've got some key takeaways here. And I would love to keep talking about this because it's something I really enjoy. But I think one of the things we have to look at is that empowered women are key to development. We will not have effective, sustainable development if over half of the population is not actively engaged and their needs are not being met. And often that happens very much around water. It's not just about equity, although equity is very, very important. It's about really doing better management of water and efficiency. In some countries, when the engineers go into a community to try to figure out where to site wells and water points, they don't talk to the men, they talk to the women, because the women are the ones who know and they understand this. Women aren't just household users of water, though. They solve the problems and we become the decision makers, and we need to continue to build that up and to empower them to do that. And women are most impacted by the water problems because of the amount of time and the lack of access that gets absorbed around the world. And if we think about that 680 million women who could become so much more active if we can address this and solve this, we really do have a phenomenal opportunity here. Perhaps we won't make the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, but if we don't do this, we're not going to make any of the other Sustainable Development Goals either. I want to thank everybody for your time and attention and for helping me to share the great work of UNDP on water, and also especially the previous speakers for the wonderful remarks. I'd like to hand back to the moderator, and I'm always happy to take any questions if there happen to be any. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mary, for your very important talk. We are so grateful and honored having you here today. Now I will present the next speaker. It's Senior Advisor Sara-Lisa Ørstavik from Norad. And Norad is the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. So you are financing our international aid. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This works, I guess? Yes. And I have some slides here. Hi, everybody. Will you help me with the slides? We've been sitting for an hour, so can everybody just get up for a moment? Can you help me with the slides? And just like stretch a bit, get comfortable, move, right? It's kind of annoying to sit for so long, even though the speakers have been just absolutely fantastic. Such a joy to follow them. And I can't wait to get to know all of you a little bit better as well. I have some slides. My name is Sara-Lisa. As was mentioned, I am a pretty new bureaucrat. I just recently joined Norad last summer after 10 years at the UN, UNDP, including, hi Mary, and the World Food Programme, working both on development issues, thank you so much, and on humanitarian response in countries like Colombia, Bangladesh, Burundi, Mauritania, other places. Wonderful. And I was asked to talk to you a little bit about what you can do as water engineers, as individuals, as some of you students maybe, as private sector companies, as associations, whomever you are, whatever you represent, what can you do? And so first of all, I am not a water expert. I have worked on gender, food systems, and innovative finance for most of my career, and now I work on humanitarian innovation. But I still hope that we can have some interesting conversations together. So first of all, as we heard, no, water and sanitation is not a huge priority. However, it is in our Norway's humanitarian strategy. So what is really Norway's humanitarian strategy all about? It goes from 2024 to 2029, and Norway is a principle-based supporter of people affected by humanitarian crises. And we really have two focuses, and one is enable the provision of immediate humanitarian assistance. So in a crisis, what people need, water, drinking water is one of the most pressing immediate issues often after a crisis or when crisis hits. And then protection. So we've heard from our previous speakers around how women and girls are particularly affected, and how water is also linked to people's ability to protect themselves, how they put themselves at risk or not. In crises, we often see large-scale essential infrastructure being destroyed. And we see affected populations putting themselves at all kinds of risk to meet their needs. So really, your job is really important, because good solutions for accessing water and sanitation actually saves lives. And there's two parts to this. One is in the crisis, ensuring the supplies, ensuring you have something when there's an urgent need, right after a climate, what do we call it these days? A climate-related disaster, or a drought. But then we have, or a war, and then we have the longer-term work of repairing systems that may have been destroyed, or creating systems or supporting system strengthenings where they are missing. And we are committed to supporting to ensure water and sanitation solutions for better health. We already heard from the other speakers, so I won't get into it, how humanitarian crises affect everyone, but not equally. Women and girls are disproportionately affected. There's increased risks of abuse, for example, and putting yourself at risk when fetching water, not having the facilities that you need as women and girls. Also men and boys, of course, so let's not forget men and boys in this, but often we see in lots of contexts, women and girls face increased risks compared to other groups. And of course, the more ill you are, the more time you have to spend fetching water or getting wash needs met, the less you have time to work, develop skills, be healthy. And as we heard from the other speakers, often there's these groups, women and girls, but in different countries it can be different. Groups of people have less access to being heard. So even though they're feeling the crisis on their bodies, like, and are sort of at the receiving end of the hardship that crisis creates, and often have lots of great solutions for what to do better, they are not often included in decision making or in the solutions. So really, our work as Norway is not so much to come in and fix everybody else's problems, right? And I think in the humanitarian and aid community, there is a bit of like this, or at least there has been a bit of this idea that the international humanitarians, they have the solutions and the money and they work and they go in there and fix it. But we really need to start with, and we do to a very large extent, start with the systems that are already there, the people who are the first responders to the crises, who are the people themselves, local NGOs, local people, and then we try to support them as much as possible. So although our funding is limited, we do have a whole range of partnerships with humanitarian organizations that work in crisis contexts to help people affected by crisis. And we do direct funding to things like water sector policy, large systems for water supply and sanitation, basic drinking water, waste management, and even education and training around water supply and sanitation. We're also working increasingly on innovation and private sector partnerships. So this is an area we'll talk a bit more about, but where there's a lot of scope for contributing. And I know in the previous presentations, we hear a lot about the problems. We're very off track meeting the SDGs. There's global commitments. There's big organizations doing work. So we feel small, or at least I do. What can we do? How can we contribute? So I'm hoping that I'm trying to sort of land us a little bit more about what concretely can people like you, us, and people like you with very special expertise contribute. Norway directs its support through Norad, and we don't implement ourselves. We give funding and support to partners, some of whom are here and will talk to us later, or UNDP, how we already heard from. So we work with Norwegian Church Aid, the ICRC, IFRC, and Norwegian Red Cross, UNDP, other UN organizations and smaller NGOs and foundations, as well as local partners. One example we can mention is the work done on large water systems in Syria. So here it's with the Red Cross, where there was huge destruction of infrastructure between 2010 and 2023. Most of the population used to have access to water, to safe drinking water, and due to the war, less than half of water and sanitation systems still remained functioning. This is quite jarring, and just as a non-water expert, I came home last week and found flooding of sewage in my basement, and now we have to redo the pipes. So now I'm super grateful suddenly for something I've been taking for granted. But all of these people who used to have this access now don't, or now didn't. And this is made even worse by climate change and increasing droughts, increasing water scarcity. What the Red Cross is then doing is rehabilitation of water facilities. In 2022, they rehabilitated 32 water facilities across Syria, helping 17 million people benefit from better access to water and safer water. And they carried out thousands of engineering projects on water and sanitation systems. So this is just, people's needs and crises are often very concrete, and we need engineers to help make this work. What could be the role of the private sector? What can people do? The Norwegian government is really committed to continuing efforts to increase cooperation between the private sector and humanitarian actors. Often the private sector doesn't know how to engage, or it can be very difficult for us in Norway to understand, wow, who do we talk to? What do we do? How can we help? But looking for those opportunities to partner with humanitarian organizations or development organizations is super essential to improve humanitarian response and resilience. And this means both the local private sector and also the international private sector, like us, so depending from the perspective you're looking at. As we heard before, there's a massive financing gap. Crises are getting worse. Fewer donors are, or the funding coming from traditional aid and humanitarian development donors is often reducing, and we have higher needs, and they're just getting worse. So what can we really do? We really need to look at jointly developing solutions, and here it's working not just Norwegian private sector and Norad, for example, but between affected people, private sector and public sector to together better meet current needs and see what we can do to all contribute to a better future. I want to show you this little graphic, which is if we think about crisis, and humanitarian response, it's kind of this ecosystem, right? Or there's a start and an end, but it's also a cycle. There's a time before a crisis hits when maybe you are afraid that something might happen. And you have to think about how can you prepare as a community, as a business, as a government? How can you prepare for potential crises? What can you do ahead of time to anticipate a potential crisis hitting, to reduce the impact so that when it hits, if it hits, that the disaster won't have as bad effects. Then the disaster happens. You need a response, immediate life-saving response to help people and meet their basic needs, including drinking water. And then there's this switch sort of between the immediate response and the longer term sort of, okay, how can we not just respond in the present, but then how do we also help a society or a community recover from what's going on? How can you rebuild destroyed infrastructure? So maybe when the crisis hits, you need to deliver sort of bottled water. Okay, but how can you then move on to recover infrastructure that was destroyed or set in systems so that water is available going forward? And this contributes to what we in our world often talk about in terms of resilience building. So restoring services and assets in a way that it keeps going. Resilience is sort of about sustainability. It's about how do we think long term? How do we ensure that we are contributing in the circle of being better prepared when the next crisis hits? So you're not always just responding to an immediate crisis, but you're coming out stronger for the next time. So this is usually how we can think about crisis and the link between immediate crisis response and longer term resilience. And within this, we can think about how can different water solutions be employed, and who can you work with, and what can you do? And this you know much better than me. But I had some discussions with different people, and I thought about this. And I think there's some very clear things that we can do. Often the private sector will think more about, okay, in a crisis, the humanitarian organizations need certain products and services, so we will sell them. So the private sector gets brought in as kind of like in a procurement sort of context to sell services to the humanitarian organizations. And that's, of course, super important. But there's more. I think there's many more ways, and we have examples of other ways that the private sector can engage. So first of all, in-kind contributions. Funding is dropping, right? and the needs are increasing. So, of course, you can provide financial support. Many companies have CSR programs that they can donate. Individuals, you may choose to I don't know, donate to UNICEF, for example, or the Red Cross. But beyond that, I think we can also support more than just through money. We can support with expertise, with technology, with services, and we can support the humanitarian organizations, for example, with provision of services to help them respond to humanitarian needs. There's also business opportunities. When I was at UNDP, we looked a lot at how can private companies contribute more to the Sustainable Development Goals, and really seeing the Sustainable Development Goals as a business opportunity. We saw some of the data before around everything that's missing in terms of providing access to quality water for people around the world. So if you think more about this as a business opportunity, maybe there are things that we can do, or that you can do, or that private companies can do, developing products and services and technology, for example, that crisis-affected populations need. Are there underserved groups, women, girls, that need products or services or a type of technology that isn't being provided? Can you be the ones providing that? Can you help your business at the same time as you're helping people access things that they need for a healthy life? Something else that's really important is partnerships with local partners. As I mentioned, the first responders in crises are local people, local businesses, local organizations. So it's not only about us coming in and bringing the solutions, but we do have specific expertise or knowledge, or we can learn from each other. We can work together to meet the capacity gap that we heard about before. And we don't need to necessarily replace the efforts that local people are doing, or we shouldn't, in my view, but rather support local actors. Sometimes we have access and have a voice and can help elevate the voices of those that are less heard. So I think that's really an important thing that we also can do. Humanitarian response can be very unsustainable. We can use a lot of single-use plastics, for example, create a lot of waste. Sometimes the technologies to do that in a better way exist. Sometimes they do not. So that is also somewhere, some place that I think the Norwegian market maybe have a particular competitive edge in developing more sustainable technologies and capacities and ways of working and sharing them with humanitarian partners. And then if we think about crises over time and long term, right? Why are we having so much climate change? Why is there increasing water scarcity? We heard about agricultural runoffs. Sometimes the way that business works or that organizations do their work doesn't sufficiently take into account the effects that we have on the world around us. So something that we all can do, no matter what kind of organization we are, is think about how can we take more into account the effects that we have on our environment, on people, so that when we do our work, we can do it in a way that reduces our negative impacts and therefore reduces the chances that crises will happen. Of course, each individual contribution is small, but I think that's also really important to bring out. I'll let you explore this a bit in your own time, but as I said, I was at UNDP before, and Norway was supporting a project around identifying business opportunities that would also contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. So you can look at this SDG investor platform. So for financiers or for businesses, you can look at different countries. There's, I think, over 45 covered, where there's market data, research done about, okay, what are the most pressing sustainable development needs? And you can filter for SDG 6 water. And what kind of business side solutions already exist and require more, or that could be scaled and have more positive impact if there was more activity, if there was more business being done on such business models, if there was more investment in these kinds of activities from the private sector side. So we can see things like affordable irrigation systems in Rwanda, provision of sanitation services in Ghana, and Kenya, and different places. So this is kind of fun to go and explore, because they will tell you both about the impact case, like why is this important from an SDG point of view, and to build resilience and capacities locally. What kind of businesses in those countries already exist that are doing this kind of work, or are they missing, or where can you support? And what's sort of the business side with like a market analysis around the potential return of investment, the investment time frame, etc. The last example I wanted to show you is something from Innovation Norway. So Norway also supports something called the Humanitarian Innovation Program. It's run by Innovation Norway. And they fund innovative projects where humanitarian organizations and private sector companies work together to find solutions or scale solutions to problems. So they have, for example, a project that's recently started now, again in Syria, on resilient irrigation for smallholder farmers. This is led by Engineers Without Borders Norway, so for all I know, you're more aware of this than I am. This is all about developing climate-resilient irrigation to strengthen local farming and protect water resources. And what's really nice about this project, which we can read more about on Innovation Norway's websites, is that it's really focused on locally grounded innovation. It's not about bringing in a whole new technology or transforming Syria into Norway, let's say. It's about enhancing and optimizing the irrigation methods that already exists, that people locally trust, that they want more of. So here you really have a project that's trying to make a meaningful impact over time, not by bringing in some new solution and trying it in a new spot, but understanding what's there, what the people are experiencing issues are facing, what ideas and what they're already doing that works, and seeing how that can be scaled, improved, made bigger, and have a greater impact. So if you want to do more, or if you want to think more about what you can do, I see many young people, so I also encourage you to look at the UN Volunteers Program, but that's for younger people, but it's also for seasoned professionals, experts in your fields that do volunteering missions for the UN or different types of opportunities with UN agencies. Please talk to Norwegian embassies in different countries. They are the best point of contact for who are the local actors in different types of crisis situations or development situations, who's working there, what's needed, and they can put you in touch with potential partners. The UN agencies, including UN Women and UNDP that we heard about today, they have representation offices in Norway or in Denmark. Their job is to interact with the Nordic market and help create partnerships where we can work together and each actor sort of bring what they're good at and see if we can do more together. So the UNDP, for example, is here in Oslo, in Copenhagen, UNICEF, UN Women, and others. So those are great to speak with. Norad's partnership section can be helpful. Innovation Norway team is an amazing group of women that are leading that program that could be worthwhile reaching out to. And of course, the Norwegian humanitarian organizations that are, some are here, we'll hear from them soon, that can have you involved. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, thanks.
So thanks a lot, Sara. We have a small present for you as well, coffee or tea, which you can take in the break. We are behind schedule, so we are shorting down a little bit on the break, but we start again here at 12:45. Then we will hand out the Junior Water Prize. That will be exciting. So we'll have a small break now. Please have some coffee, water, and some food if you want. And see you back in a few minutes, 12:45.
Good afternoon. My name is Edith Akerø, and today I represent the Arrangement Committee for the Norwegian Junior Water Prize. Yesterday we had the finale at NVE here in Oslo, and we were lucky enough to listen to 3 projects by Norwegian high school students who are here today also. We will watch the project videos that the students have created, and we will also be able to live now see who won the actual prize. To read the statement from the jury, Hans Olav will take the floor after me, but enjoy this work that the students have worked so hard on. Thank you.
Should we start the videos right away, or should I briefly introduce them? Yeah, first maybe say a little bit about the Junior Water Prize for those of you that don't know what this is. This is a project-based competition aimed at inspiring young people's interest and engagement in local and global water issues. And the winners will, I assume, because that has been the standard practice, going to Stockholm during the World Water Week. So all the hot shots in water go to Stockholm end of August. That has always been the case, because that's the place to go to discuss water issues. So this prize then is being, or this competition is being organized by the Norwegian Water Association and the Norwegian Hydrological Council, and in collaboration with Inspiria, and the sponsors this year are NRVA, that's the Northern Romerike Water, Waterworks, and also Asplan Viak, so that's why we are here. They have 3 finalists that will see the videos. The first one is Julia Sørensen, Pia Eriksen, and Magnus Hestne, and Will Arens from the Drammen Upper Secondary School that have collected water samples from a local stream. Then we have Silas Mo, Neil Aliyev from BIS Centrum. I don't know what BIS Centrum is, but it's British Inter. That's why we are speaking English, I assume, because they worked on technical solutions and calculations to detect leaks and estimate the size. And then we have the third finalist is Marie Tangen and Paul Andersen. They're also from the Drammen Upper Secondary School, and they conducted a similar project collecting water samples from a stream at Nordbykollen near Drammen. So then we'll show a short video from each of them, so that we'll get some further information on their work before we start awarding the prizes. Snurr film.
Hei, jeg heter Magnus. Dette her Pia, Julia og Will. Vi kommer fra Drammen videregående skole, og vi har forsket på vannkvaliteten i Krokstadbekken. Dette gjorde vi som følger av et prosjekt i faget teknologi og forskningslære.
Under dette prosjektet har vi sammenlignet vannprøver før og etter bekken har rett gjennom et boligområde. Vi undersøkte disse vannprøvene for E. coli, fosfat, nitrat, ledningsevne og turbiditet. Grunnen til dette fordi at selv om det en liten bekk, så vil vannkvaliteten til bekken fortsatt ha en stor betydning for lokalmiljø og for mennesker rundt.
Vår hypotese var at Krokstadbekken hadde generelt god vannkvalitet. Bekken hadde visuelt sett veldig klart vann og steinbunn, noe som tyder på lav turbiditet. Men vi forventer større mengder av E. coli, nitrat og fosfat fra prøvene tatt etter at vannet har rent gjennom et boligfelt, siden ting som overvann fra asfalt kan påvirke renheten av vannet med uønskede kjemikalier.
Generelt så viser resultatene at Krokstadbekken lite forurenset. E. coli ble funnet i lave mengder etter boligfelt, og svært lite eller ingenting før boligfelt. Og dette samsvarer med hypotesen vår. Dette kan tyde på påvirkning fra mennesker eller dyr, eller at det lekkasje fra avløpssystemer.
Målingene av fosfat, turbiditet og nitrat og ledningsevne var lave, noe som vil tyde på minimal påvirkning fra veisalt, industri eller landbruk.
Takk for oss.
Water pipes all over the world is a serious problem. We lose around 346 million cubic liters of water daily. This adds up to $49 billion lost of water revenue.
The simplest way of explaining low-revenue water is that the water gets treated by a water company, but it never gets paid for. And this is because the water gets lost during transportation.
The problem is both governments and the companies spend a lot of money treating and pumping this water. But the issue is it never reaches the consumer and never gets used. This wastes both public and private resources.
To solve this problem, we designed a water leak detection system. Our first idea was a leak detection model. If water leaked from a pipe, it would fall onto a ramp, which then it would guide the water to a sensor and activate a buzzer or any type of detection system. We then tested whether the size of the leak affected how fast our system responded. Our hypothesis was that larger holes would be detected faster because they allow more water to escape in less time. The model was able to detect the larger leaks in the pipe, but it failed to detect a 4mm leak. This shows that the system still needs improvement for smaller leaks. To get further feedback on our model, we asked a professional for his feedback. As stated from the feedback, our ramp idea was not practical, and this changed our thinking. We realized that the problem was not the detection principle itself, but where we wanted to install it. Water pipes normally stretch from 25 to 100 meters, and if you want to assume that a water pipe is 62.5 meters, and we would install the ramp in a 10-degree slope, the height between the ramp and the starting of the pipe would be around 22.75 meters. And as an example, me standing here from here to here is 1 meter, and we would have to take down 20 more of the same height, which would turn into a major construction work.
Instead of abandoning the old idea, we decided to adapt it by, for example, placing a water buzzer behind toilets, behind the showers, just in generally exposed areas, such as underneath sinks. Oh wait, as you can see here, there's occurred a leak. I might have to implement our product here.
But we still wanted to solve the main problem of water loss in larger pipe systems, so we developed the idea on 2 levels. Inside buildings, small leak sensors could help detect hidden leaks earlier. In the main supply pipes, we are also exploring a pressure monitoring concept. By comparing pressure at different points, unusual pressure drops could indicate a possible leak. To make this idea more practical, we also created a mock dashboard. Instead of only detecting the leak, the system would also send the alert digitally, so the exact room or zone can be identified quickly. On the dashboard, maintenance staff can see where the leak was detected, how serious it is, and whether the issue is still active or has already been resolved.
Har du noe lyd? It's 2026 and we don't have the technology working properly, Shall we just start? Do you turn it off or? Okay, let's just award the prizes. So the first prize is actually, I almost don't dare to touch it, but this is to the winner, this glass sculpture. And in addition, it will be a cash prize of 20,000, which 10 to the school and the remainder to the students. The second and the third place, they will get a diploma with the same information as the winners, and a prize of 5,000 krone each to be shared among the students. So then let me start by announcing or reading out some of the explanations that the jury has done of their assessment. And the jury, on the third place, the jury appreciated the clear explanation of the setup and the detailed description of how the turbidity sensor was constructed. While there was only one sampling point and relatively few samples, the participants demonstrated solid subject knowledge and insight, and they plan to expand their sampling in line in the continuation of the project. So the third place then goes to Maria Lindqvist Tangen and Paul Andreas Korsmo Andersen from the Drammen Upper Secondary School. So if you can come. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think we'll have to do like this. Okay, then we are good to go on that one. Congratulations. And then the jury found the report that has been submitted to be well structured and thoroughly documented. The sampling process was described in detail with 2 sampling points and multiple samples taken at different times. And it was particularly positive that they developed their own sensors to measure turbidity, demonstrating strong subject knowledge related to pollution mapping. So the second place then goes to Julia Kristine Sørensen, Pia Sui Eriksen, Magnus Kill Hestne, and Will Archer Arnesen from the Drammen Upper Secondary School again. Gratulerer. Gratulerer. They had really strong handshakes here, so. Okay, then you can hold it. Okay, thank you. Then it's quite evident who the winner is, since we had 3 finalists. But the jury says that this is a highly relevant topic. The report that has been submitted includes sketches and photos of the technical solution, the product they developed, and we saw that also in their presentation, and the methodology was well described. During their final presentation, they explained that they had identified several practical limitations in using such a product, and we saw that on the film as well. And they also suggested a potential alternative application for the product, and also how they can use other technologies for leak detection and measurement. So the jury concludes that they demonstrated a high level of creativity and subject knowledge, and are therefore awarded first place in the Norwegian jury or Norwegian Junior Water Prize for 2026. So, please. That's Silas Mo O'Neill Alayev from the British International School. Congratulations.
Oh, sorry.
And then you need the main one. Don't drop it, because then it's quite heavy.
You hold it.
Okay. And then I would wish you a good trip to Stockholm. I hope that you get a chance to present it. It will be a great experience for you to be there. There are lots of young people going to Stockholm, but they all have their opportunity to present their work, and that's good. And I just saw that before I came up here, that the main Stockholm Water Prize has already been awarded also to an Iranian scientist. So that is also something that is well worth noting. So with those words, thank you to all, and thank you to the 3 finalists and winners. You've done an excellent job, and I'm looking forward to see you all working on the field of water in the coming years. Thanks. I guess the check will be awarded.
Thank you so much. I really feel warmth and happiness inside, because I'm so glad we have so many school children here. It's like Hans Olav said earlier, that the next generation, it's so important that you choose to work with water. The sustainability goal for water is the least achieved yet. Okay, I would like to present the next speaker who will talk about concrete technical solutions for these problems we have heard. And it's Iker Montes Burgos from the Norwegian Red Cross and the International Red Cross. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iker Montes. I work for the Norwegian Red Cross here in the International Department in Oslo. My main specialization is in WASH. I will talk, when I will be referring to technical things, I will call WASH because we like to say water, sanitation, and hygiene promotion are linked together. Today is World Water Day. We also have Sanitation Day. We have also Menstrual Hygiene International Day. So it's tightly linked. And I am here representing the Norwegian Red Cross, which is part of the IFRC, the International Federation of the Red Cross, which is kind of like a league of all the national societies together. And I'm going to talk like how we have been having speakers from the government, like donors, UN, big organizations, and we work at the, my work at least is like at the grassroots level, implementing, designing projects where we have to take in consideration the equality, of course, because as other speakers have said, where water flows, equality grows. And I would like to put it like more into WASH context, where we also will talk about sanitation and how does it impact. Because in the end, every drop of water we produce to be drunk or to be used for kettle or something, in the end, sooner or later it would be wastewater or sanitation related water. Why it matters? We also heard about that. It matters because the burden of waters is not equally distributed. I have to remember, like, I think it was 2019, I did a similar presentation in this forum when it was regarding minorities, I think, and we focused the presentation on refugees. And if you are a refugee and you are lucky enough to be in a settlement where an organization is working, like the Red Cross or Kirkens Nødhjelp, and we focus on water and we follow the international standards, as a refugee, imagine like this woman over here, you are supposed to have usually 15 liters of water per person per day in your household, within 500 meters of your tent, for example. And you have to queue less than 30 minutes, and then it has to be, of course, of a good quality. It has to be no contamination, no odors, no chemical things. Then you are like, okay. And we did an experiment. We call it the refugee challenge, where if you would come to this arena, we will give you 2 jerrycans or 3 jerrycans or 4 jerrycans according to your size. And I was super puzzled because I could not do my job. I was too tired. I'm relatively fit, and I had 2 kids, and I'm a single-headed household person, so I would have to carry out 45 kilograms, around 400 meters, and I just had to stop so much that in the end it was time to go. So this is to put into context, like even people like me that work in that, the burden of it, you just don't understand it so much. So when you have this woman that will spend a lot of hours because she has 3 kids or 4 kids and then waiting, then that reduces the number of things she can do. A lot of people just spend 2-3 hours just to go fetch water, and they have, of course, like heavy loads. You can see people that like have problems to bring the water they can consume every day, and also safety and everything. And this is general, but my work usually it's in emergencies when you put an extra layer on top, which is not only you have, this is your daily life, this is your things that you have to cope with, but on top of that, for example, in the work we do in the water supply rehabilitation area from the Red Cross that I will introduce later, we work a lot in floodings. So suddenly, this water point is flooded, and you have to, instead of taking water from the best and closer point to your house, you have to do extra work of going maybe like 400 meters because it's the next unflooded point, or things like this. So on top of that, when crisis hits, it's even an extra burden for women, extra load, extra everything, also for kids, which have, like, if you can see here, like this is probably a jerry can you will bring, but sometimes you have smaller jerry cans and you see children as little as this, bringing their own share of water to the households instead of going to school, instead of playing as they should be doing. Yeah, there's a lot of places like this that we visit, especially after floods, where people is just trying to collect water no matter where, and the facilities are usually poorly located, and as they mentioned also, very importantly, we'll go through it later, there is a very unequal participation in the decision making. At least, like, it's my experience in the field. I have been working in this field for 15 years, mainly in projects in Africa. It's like usually any technical decisions are made by us men, and you can see also there was many people presenting here. There were 2 women out of all of us. So even in the sector, we are missing a lot of women participation. I'll show you a little bit of a figure later on that, at least us, it makes us proud, but this is still way to go. So we have to count on them for decision making, very importantly. One size does not fit all. So there is whatever they need in Uganda, say that this is Uganda, or the different places, is very different. We have to take into consideration everybody, not only gender, but also inclusion of people with disabilities, also single mothers, lactating women. There's like a whole different things of technologies and solutions that we have to think of. And in emergencies, that's really a challenge, because leaving no one behind is really difficult when the need is so great, the resources are so scarce. We have been hearing about the scarcity of the resources. It's huge. Like every year we have like more difficulty to access funds. Although we are very, like, I think we are here in Norway very, very happy that we have the government that still supports us in many of our operations, especially, for example, at the projects I work with, funded by Norad directly. So it's still like a hope for us. But yeah, we have to make the best of it. I wanted to ask questions maybe to the public, if it's fine. My question is very simple. What parameters would you consider that you need to have in a good toilet, in a restaurant, bar, wherever you go? What things do you think are important to have? Michele, please, be the first one. You want it clean, yes. Cleanliness. What are the things do we need there? When you go to, if you go out in a bar and you want to relieve a little bit, what do you look for in the toilet? You want clean water there, yes. Hand wash with soap, preferably. Huh? Privacy, yes, very important. Because people talk in the toilets, as they mentioned before. So you want privacy. What about the women? Can we have like more women-related things? Paper, yes. Sometimes in my toilet, in the Red Cross, we have tampons and other things for menstrual hygiene in the toilet. So also many other things. So when we do latrines out in the field, we have to think about all of these things. We also need to make them available to everybody, so people with handicapped people, And we put here like a list of some of the things we think of when we construct latrines. Accessible to everybody, big doors so people can come in if they are in crutches because maybe they have been wounded in a war or they have problems walking. We have a dustbin, we have water, we have very important lighting. I don't think we think about this because we have lighting everywhere, but if you're in a refugee camp, lighting is very scarce. And then you will be afraid to go to the toilet in the night as a woman, so you will maybe hold it or maybe go next to your tent and then defecate there. And then that becomes a problem when the next rain comes and your poo spreads all over the place. I think, well, we wash people and we tend to talk about poo without any, like, we think it's a good word. So I use it very much. And also, very important, a lock, for example. A lot of the times it's very difficult to have this in a very first phase emergency response where you have like latrines that are made in plastic sheeting, for example. But we have to think on all of this. So females are also fine going to use the facilities. There's many other things like, I mean, some of them, for example, water, really, really difficult. I cannot think of many emergency latrines that we build, for example, in refugee sites where you have water available to flush or for other things apart than for hand washing with soap, which is one of the things that is the most important after you use this type of latrine, any latrine, but going to the toilet. So we have to have all of this in mind when we're working in the field. And then we have different barriers. As I said, we talk about dignity. So we have to make them clean. So somebody has to clean them. We have to make them accessible to everybody. If you see here, for example, I believe that this would probably be Bangladesh by the type of location we have. Imagine that you are a person in crutches because, I don't know, you have had an accident and then you have to go up there to use the latrine. That won't be possible. And then probably if you would have participated in the decision-making process of where to construct this latrine, maybe this would have not happened. Or maybe yes, because maybe there is the only way. Sometimes you don't know, but it's very important. It's also this latrine is also probably very not safety for these small children over there. You know, they tend to, oh yeah, I see that. You even have to jump to go the last step. So maybe there was a big flood and it broke. So all of these are different barriers that we have to think of. And it's true that sometimes it's very complicated to balance everything. But in the field, we try to do like the best we can. So from one size fits all, that used to be the case some years back, where you would just do latrines and then maybe, if possible, just put something for disabled people, maybe a little bit better. We are moving, at least in the movement, and I think that everywhere else that I have been working to a more like tailor approach where we need everybody in the decision making to make it work, to make it good, and to lead to a more sustainable solutions and contribute to the whole community's well-being. I mean, like, I'm going to center a little bit more. This was a bit more generic of what we do in WASH in the movement and how we treat it, but my day-to-day work in the office is dealing with the WSR ERU, which stands for Water Supply Rehabilitation ERU. It's a tool from the IFRC, the federation, and basically we have funds from mainly our Norwegian government donors, and a big pool of expertise of Norwegian engineers, international engineers, and people of WASH. And what we do is bring in these solutions in water after an emergency. We have been deployed 9 times in the last 5 years since we started. So it's quite a successful tool of the IFRC. Last time, I mean, we are deployed right now in Mozambique, Somalia, or Somaliland, depends how you, Somaliland is the place where we are, and then in Cabo Verde. And what we do is quickly, within 1 to 2 weeks of the emergency happening, if it's like a sudden onset emergency, we mobilize a team, we do an assessment, and we start doing rehabilitation, trainings, capacity building of the national society. And all of this is also taking into consideration, of course, women needs. It depends on, we try to engage them as much as possible in all parts of the decision making. And I will talk a little bit after about the challenges that we face. We have had so far now up to like 280,000 beneficiaries in all the deployments. Each one is a different deployment, and we face different problems because Somaliland has nothing to do in terms of societal rules, in terms of access to water to, for example, Cabo Verde or Zimbabwe, Nigeria. So it's very specific. So our ERU, like the concept of ERU in the IFRC, it's around 3 to 4 months. Our ERU, it's a little bit longer time. So we focus on the first phase towards post-emergency. There is other ERUs that are working more into the first phase emergency. We are kind of like a little bit first and post-recovery. And we link also with we have the time to link also, as some of the people mentioned, with the longer-term emergency response, post-emergency response, like development projects and stuff. And we also have the component of preparedness for the next time. A lot of places where we work, emergencies are recurrent. This year is Kenya, next year is Zimbabwe, next year is Nigeria, next year is Kenya. So there is like places on Earth where with climate change, the emergencies are going to happen more and more. So we need to think of whatever we do has to be sustainable and has to be helping toward the next time that a big event is going to happen. And for example, this is one of the things that we do. We not only repair the hand pumps that people is using, but we also take some of them and make them resilient to flooding. So we elevated them with ramps so everybody can access the hand pumps. And in selected locations, we solarize them so they are ready for the next time there would be a flood. Some people will have access to these sites. Like usually they are like IDP, internally displaced person sites where people gather to take refuge when there is rains, and then they need a lot of water. Usually it's the schools, so we also operate them thinking on the next event. So I mentioned we do like all of this work and we take into consideration gender, but also inclusion of disabled people and things like that. But it's true that it comes with challenges, a lot of challenges. For example, starting from ourselves, we have a challenge. For example, if we want to push forward the gender issue and be more looking toward women, we're getting better. Engineers, I'm not an engineer, but engineers are getting better at that. But we also need female engineers, and there are not so many in the world in general. And for example, in this case, where we work in Africa, there are not that many. In our roster, we have 30% of the total roster for WASH persons are female, which we're very happy of. It's like, for me, it's like, it's a surprise, I would say. A lot of women are in our roster, but still much less than 50%. So meaning that you guys, you lot here, the new generations, be proud. If you're an engineer woman, be proud of it, shout it, and do a great job, because we need you, because you have also the mentality already rooted. You don't need to get through the process. Insufficient and poorly targeted funding. We have, in the Red Cross, we have what we call DREF, disaster response emergency funds and the emergency appeals that we launched to get these funds, but it's really difficult. Like as you have seen in the charts, WASH is like becoming less and less prevalent, I think, in favor of other sectors that are also very important, but we are there. Yeah, and this is, I had a couple of pictures where you see like in many countries, cultural roots are really segregation of women. Like if we would be in Nigeria, all the women would be here, all the men would be here, if the women are at all in the room. Because sometimes you are just not possible to match anybody. Like if I would be in a place in Somalia, maybe I would not even be allowed to talk to women. So that's already like culture is like a huge thing that we need to take into consideration. And we as WASH cannot change that, but we try to circumvent it by having female in our team. We have to have females if we want to talk about menstrual hygiene. But on the other hand, there are not so many. So we need to capture them and retain them. And yeah, so that's a little bit our history and the Red Cross and the WSR ERU. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any, and if not, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Iker. Please have... yeah, we are a bit behind schedule, so we don't have time for questions, unfortunately. So we are preparing for our last presentation today. It will be from Michel Vecchi. He's a senior advisor in the Norwegian Church Aid. We will just get his presentation up on the screen here. And seems to be ready now, so you can...
Okay.
Get this presentation up on the screen here. So,
okay, thank you. So yes, good afternoon from Norwegian Church Aid, Kirkens Nødhjelp. I'm Michele Vecchi. I'm working with the WASH program, similar to what the previous presenter, Iker. But this presentation has been done together with my colleague Florence Kimanzi, and she's a senior advisor for the programs against gender-based violence. We try to work together as much as possible, especially when teams are like today, water and gender equality. So yeah, it's not only my presentation, it's our presentation. Very briefly, there are the countries where NCA works in the world. So you can see overrepresentation of Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and then Asia and a bit of Americas. So our reflections are deeply inspired by the work that we do in those countries. Yeah, global issues and facts, I think we heard them a lot. I will not go in details, also for the sake of time. So I've highlighted some keywords: gender equality, water empowerment, prevent gender-based violence, menstrual hygiene management, quite relevant, not so widely spoken, decision-making for women, men, together. And then we all said, recognizing women and girls, they bear the primary responsibility for bringing water at home in so many places. Okay, and then this one figure is always eats me. So the 250 million hours. I came to that conclusion also sometimes ago, calculating my own, very close to that. But 250 million is too big. What? 250 million hours? What exactly means? So it's 28,000 years. So every day, women, girls, lose 28,000 years, equivalent years, in bringing water home. That, I think, helps us in bringing it in perspective, this thing. It's not these 250 million, I cannot touch it, it's 28,000 years. And I think, for me, is more understandable. Yeah, okay, so intersections and these disproportions. Why? Because it is the theme of today, where water flows, equality grows. Yes, but we have seen that water doesn't flow enough, doesn't flow to the right places, in all the places. So that is an issue. All these 250 million women that they don't have, they drink dirty water, they have husband, children that do the same. So they are part of a bigger number that doesn't have access to clean water. But in top of that, they have to carry it at home and lose in the 28,000 years. Yeah. So what is at the core of our work, or at least what moves us? Moves the idea that we are all equal, so we have equal rights and different needs. So we can be women, men, we can come from minorities, various ethnic minorities or religious minorities, you name it. We can have different levels of ability, of disability. That is something. But what we want is gender equality, rich gender equality and inclusion. Also because exclusion can be multi-layered. If you are a woman from a minority and with disability, all these piles up. So it's not only 28,000 years, but it's even more, because you can be a woman with disability from a minority. So it can be much worse. Yeah. Then we, from various studies that we have done and various talks with colleagues and people we meet, our partners, we can say, for example, that at family level, yes, we know, women carry water at home. Okay, we said many times. But men might use that water first. Men feel less water insecure than women. Yes, because they don't carry it at home. So I find it there is a big problem. Not so much for me. I always take my shower in the evening. So since I'm the one also taking the decision at home and in the public sphere, I will prioritize that. Maybe not so much. I don't feel it. I feel it. Yeah, I think you get me. Then another thing we know, access to sanitation, toilets and showers is limited after dark when it's distant from home and or shared with neighbors. We were discussing exactly about this with some colleagues in Burkina Faso recently. There was a good access to toilets, but women were not satisfied because they were distant. They were not the toilets of their household, were the one of the neighbors. So they had to walk when it's dark and that. So, and then there is a need for privacy and safety, lockable doors for toilet and showers facilities. This is another thing we have seen so many times in our programs when talking with the women or men. If we ask the same question, is to have a door important for you in your toilet, in your shower at home? Men tend to say, not so much. We are a family. But women, they say, yes, I want a door at home. So if we don't ask, we don't have the answer. If we don't involve women and girls in this discussion, we will not hear that. If they are not part of the decision-making, things doesn't work. Yeah, and what we also want to have, we want to have a double approach. We want to act at public and family level. Public level, involvement, official involvement, water committees, inclusion, yes. Policies, yes. But things, they start from home also, in the family. So can we discuss things? If, as Iker was saying, we have to carry home 45 kilos of water per day, why is the woman or the girl that has to do it when the man, the brothers, the uncle is stronger? When maybe they have access to a bicycle, to a trolley or something. So all these questions need to be answered, because when we talk about this, we realize the barriers and we can act on them. Okay. So, yes, just to a bit on the same line, a bit more facts. Yes, that carrying water at home is for women, too often. But there is access to clean water. Yes, this was about Malawi, but the distance is a factor. So there might be water available, but the time again. Yes. So with women or people that are fetching water at home, they will not have time to other things, to rest even. Waking up much earlier, taking water, doing all the rest if they're lucky to be able to do it. Yes, and then for women and girls in reproductive age, menstruation, in those periods of the month, they need more water, they need more privacy. So this is a disproportionate effect, the absence of water for them. Yes. And often is also, this topic is also connected to the risk of being exposed to gender-based violence. So when we find that this is more rampant, when social cohesion is limited, so when there is unbalanced forces in the community, when there is bad intention in some individuals. Okay, and then when water points, sanitation facilities are without lighting for evening, was said before. When these are a long distance, of course, we are exposed on the trajectory. And but this, we can act on this, and we have to act on this. But this is only a risk mitigation. It will remove opportunity to do violence against somebody. It will not take away the cause of violence. So, though WASH services, they can help a lot in prevention and in protection, is not the only thing, because we cannot live only in our homes. Oops. Okay. Okay, and yes, so NCA, where we work, thinks that women belong in all places where decisions are being made, home, public sphere. We promote participation in public sphere, 50-50, but not only as a qualified presence. One thing is to be in a committee and not be able to talk. One thing is to be in a committee and having a responsibility position. So is there where we aim at. Then what we do also, we cooperate between the WASH program, that is water, sanitation and hygiene, the GBV program, gender-based violence, the SRHR, so sexual and reproductive health and rights. So things, since there is a very private and intimate dimension to all of this, we work together as much as possible. So we want also to create some preconditions, some building bridges. So we work with the WASH and sanitation and in schools for students, for having a good experience in school, but also to see that it's possible to have good services and to demand them at home from their parents or to establish when they will be adults. We challenge social norms. For example, why is the girl that has to bring the 40 liters jerrycan at home? Why is not the brother that is big? Yep. But also we think that it's very important that we have household-based WASH services. So if at home, a man, a woman, a girl can attend to themselves, can have water, can have a bathing shelter, can do laundry, can wash their underwear with privacy and hang them without them being exposed. That might be strange for us, but is a big issue. Exposing underwear in the public, in some culture, is not possible. So these are decisions that a family can take on their own if all the members of the family can talk to each other and influence decisions. Yeah, so I was trying to keep it short because I imagine that everybody wants to talk and have questions or maybe going on. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you everyone for a fantastic program today. So we are so grateful to all of you, and especially to you, high school pupils. So this was the first time we in FTU actually reached the young people. The live chat on YouTube, the live chat of this streaming is full of comments from high school pupils all over the country. Okay, so I have a special personal message for Magnus. Is Magnus in this room? You are Magnus, yeah. It's a personal message to you. Your hairstyle was perfect today. Yeah. So I think that's a good closing remark, because we have to, the young people have to engage in securing clean water for all the world. Thank you so much for today.